This is the webinar for The Elephant Queen for people who have just watched it, to meet the directors of the film, which is still ongoing. So I think what we'll do, Vicky, is let the film run to the conclusion before we start the conversation, if that's okay with you guys.
Definitely. No, we'd much rather people watched it to the end.
We revered Alan so much. I mean, he was our mentor. He was, in our opinion, the world's best wildlife filmmaker, and we just thought we're going to learn so much. So we came out to join him in 1987, and we've never left.
Oh, so great.
I've got a little. I'm going to put my director's hat on for a second. Mark, when you wiggle that yellow pencil around, it breaks it. It cuts up the audio because I think the bandwidth can't keep up with it.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you.
So yeah, I guess that's how we started. But really, we've just been driven by a passion to tell stories from the wild, right from the day we started. Just the idea that you can explore, you can try and understand the natural world that we're all so very much a part of, and then then be able to both visually, with words, with music, bring everything together to try and share our understanding of whatever it is we're looking at, and in this case, elephants and all those animals that share their world.
Well, I mean, this, obviously the passion comes through. I mean, this film is amazing. Is this the biggest film you've made? Is this like the biggest project?
It's certainly the biggest project, in that making a film that's an hour and a half and telling a story over an hour and a half is a totally different thing than doing a 50-minute documentary. And we wanted to make a film that really engaged you emotionally. So we wanted to inspire the world to fall in love with elephants, because we really believe that's the starting point of wanting to protect them and wanting to share our world with them.
Great. Well, congratulations. And I have to say that, as a Kenyan, and of course, from what I've been seeing, so many people so proud that this film was made in Kenya. And you hit the nail on the head. It is an extremely emotional film. I've got my tissues here.
That's in short supply at the moment.
my nieces were watching, and they were just, also very sad when Mimi was in trouble, and I was watching the Twitter feed. My brother got very upset. He said, why didn't you save Mimi? Why didn't someone try to save Mimi? Is there a reason why you didn't?
With Mimi, because she always stayed with her family. I think had she been left behind, then we could have done something. But I think had we gone in and tried to remove her when we realised she was failing, I think it would have caused the family so much distress that it would have been, it probably wouldn't have worked, and it pushed them to the edge. And in all of the time we were filming in Saba, we crossed calves that had been orphaned, and if they were alone, and often they'd come out of the bush and they'd see the filming vehicle and tag themselves onto the filming vehicle, then we would always call in the authorities. We'd notify KWS and the Sheldrake Wildlife Trust, and within an hour or something, we'd have a vehicle there, and we'd all do our best to rescue the orphan, and then it would get flown to Nairobi. So whenever we could, we did. But just in that situation, we couldn't. And the family was so much supporting her, and her mother was so attentive, and Millie as well. And unfortunately, it is one of those things that happen in the wild. But believe me, I mean, had we had the opportunity to get in, we would have tried to do it.
Well, it was an amazing film, because you got to relate to elephants almost like human beings. And a number of people commented on social media that they were just learning so much. People said, we thought this film would just be about elephants. And they were very surprised to see the killifish and the frogs eating each other, all these things that are going on in nature that we just don't see. You have to stop and really watch to see some of these things. And so, with all the crisis that elephants have been facing over the last few years, it's it's extraordinary that you've made a film about, elephants and their behavior and their role in the ecosystem at a time when most of the films were about poaching and a lot of the challenges and the threats elephants are facing. Is there a particular reason why you chose this particular narrative?
I think there have been some amazing pictures, amazing films made about the ivory crisis, and we didn't want to tread that same path. We felt that there's really a disconnect, I feel, in the world now between people and the natural world, and we were really trying to say, look, elephants are amazing animals, both in their own right, but also they are a keystone species, and to try and just show how important they are to the ecosystem, to the frogs, to the fish, to the chameleons, to the geese, everything else that in some way, when you look out at a scene around a waterhole, you might just see the big animals come in and drink, but in fact, there's so much more to it. And we want to show that to people, just have them reflect on how it's not just the big eye that are, at the center of the wildlife world in a way, and especially what people come as tourists to see.
I think it was also precisely our internet's very unstable. I think it was precisely the fact there were also some fantastic films which actually dealt with the crisis. And really, there is a limit, as we're all experiencing now, to how much suffering one can absorb. And actually, one needs to just remember and be taken deep into the natural world. And just, we so strongly believe that if you don't come to love and understand something, you're never going to want to protect it anyway. And with the life that we all live as human beings these days, we're so disconnected that, and that this film, we wanted to be like a window, like spend an hour and a half in the wild with that herd and the life that goes on around them, and just feel what it feels like.
Well, it certainly gave that impression, and we promised everyone here that we would bring elephants into their homes. So, and a lot of people said they felt so lucky and so privileged that they could watch it. But unfortunately, in some parts of Kenya, there were power outages, and some people didn't have access to the channel. And I think a little bit later on, we'll talk about how, some of the other things that we might be able to do to solve some of those challenges. But I'm going to ask you now, Vicky, so you guys filmed over an extended period of time. Can you tell us a little bit about what shooting this kind of film is like? What's it like out there in the field? A lot of people ask questions about what's it like to be a filmmaker? What does it take to be a filmmaker, a wildlife filmmaker?
I think, first of all, you have to be 100% passionate about it, because there are a lot of things that you can't do that you might normally enjoy if you lived in a city. So you have to be completely obsessed with it. You have to be prepared to work incredibly hard, long hours, unpredictable hours, to chop and change at the shortest notice. Where we're incredibly lucky, and what makes a film like The Elephant Queen possible, is that we work with a small, very tight-knit, very dedicated team. That team in total is 10 people, and those people are as committed to the film as we are. We live almost like a family. We used to sort of joke that the elephants were one family and we were another. And you really rely on everybody. We couldn't take one person out of that 10 and keep going. Everybody had a role to play. And I think that is an essential part of filmmaking, is working, and whatever your speciality is, working as part of a team. It's also the joy of it. But I think more than anything, it's really hard work. I think people romanticize it. It's wonderful, I'm not saying it's not. We wouldn't do anything else, and we've been doing it for 35, 40 years. But it is, you have to really, really want to do it to survive it.
Okay, then I'm going to ask Mark the next question, because I've been out in the field even with my phone, I can film an elephant, but you were filming some tiny little things and some extraordinary detail, like the killifish underwater, hugging his wife so that she lays an egg, or the frog jumping onto the tusk of an elephant, and those carmine bee eaters floating alongside the elephants. How on earth did you guys get those kind of images? Or are they trade
I think
secrets?
a lot of it was there's a few trade secrets there, but a lot of it is observing something and seeing it happen and then working out just what you need to do to film the shot. And often it's very simple. So for example, with the Carmine beaters, we were there watching them. They only came in for a few days each year. And we would observe the elephants walking through the grass and the grasshoppers flying out and the birds going down. And we thought, well, what happens if we then try that with the Land Rover? So we would go out on drive very early, fix the camera outside of the car, and the birds behaved just as the Land Rover was a big elephant. And they come, they were remarkably unfazed by it. They would come to within a foot or two of the lens and they'd sweep around the front. And things like for example, the fish egg, which is the smallest thing, it's about 1 millimeter or less than 1 millimeter across, to film that hatching, to work out how do you build something like a macro bench, which we'd heard of but knew nothing about. And then it was a matter of buying components from the internet and making something which moved the subject through little proportional joysticks in relation to the camera, because you couldn't move the camera because it was too big and heavy and had fans going and vibration problems. So in that case, we'd have this tiny little microscope slide movers, and then rig those all together in order to be able to move that fish egg around. And it's really, so it's seeing the behavior, knowing the behavior that happens, and then trying to work out a way which will allow you to film that.
That's phenomenal. Wow.
What he failed to tell you there was that one of the techniques, well, actually, maybe it's more fitting than I'm telling you. We decided to put Mark in a metal box and bury him underground for a month at a time.
Oh my God.
And that was in order to achieve a shot where you could look. We'd bury the box and have like a letterbox slit at the front of it for the lens, and put that literally at ground level or at water level, so that we were down on the level of the smaller animals and filming them to be as important and as characterful as the elephant. But it meant literally Mark being underground. You'd go in at dawn, we'd open the hatch at dusk, and between times he would be left in there literally roasting, because you can imagine in the sun with a metal top, it was like an oven. But Mark, I think you should share the story of what happened one day in that box.
There was one time where it was the middle of the day, nothing much was happening, and it was just so hot that I actually took, and it was a tiny box. It was probably no more than 1.5 meters in any direction, and about 1.5 meters high. And I took off all my clothes. It was so hot, and it was just muddy and wet at the bottom. And I curled around the tripod in the bottom of this tin box, trying to get cool. And I thought I must have drifted off to sleep, because I thought I woke myself by my own snoring. But what I found was a big bull elephant, and I think it was Satao, had come over, and he put his trunk right down inside through the hole at the front where I was filming, and the end of his trunk was right in my face, and he was just smelling me. And he'll thrash around with his trunk, and he'd certainly knock the camera over and destroy that. And he could easily injure himself against the metal sides of the box. And so I'd seen the keepers at the Nairobi orphanage blow into the ends of the little orphans' trunks to calm them down. And so I thought, well, I'll try that. So I blew into the end of this huge trunk. And with that, the whole thing sort of squirmed around the box, and he withdrew it and thundered away. But as I tell Vicky, that was the last time I went to sleep in that filming hide.
That is quite a story. Oh my God. So you may be the only human being who physically touched Satao, and he was alive. That's very special. Why did you choose that particular style of telling the stories? Being at that ground level or driving alongside the birds. There were so many angles which were unusual, like seeing the elephants from below as they walked past you.
what we were
yes, I think part of it goes back to Vicky and her sort of vision for making a film right from the very start.
Okay. So I think what we were trying to do was we wanted to tell the story in the style of that you might almost imagine in animation. So as many different angles to give as much character to the animals, but always to do it with respect and not to, you know, I think you can take it too far and make it too, you need to let the animals be what they are, but at the same time then work around that scene in order to sort of, I suppose the films I had in mind, which I wanted to put in a great big pot, mix up and then shoot in the wild, were a mixture of March of the Penguins because of the genre,
right.
The Lion King because of the circle of life, and then Shrek because of the like, really? Ugh factor. And so
right.
the kind of concept for the film was that in order our possible audience worldwide, and not just people who already love wildlife. And so we shoot it in a way that would make it emotional, compelling, a good story, but the subjects just happen to be real and happen to be wildlife, and you know, they became the stars.
Right.
And I think, Paula, going back to your question of the angle on especially the smaller characters, that was really to, you know, if you can get down at something's eye level, it gives them a lot more presence. And I think we felt that if we were filming them from above and always looking down on them, somehow that would diminish them. So we wanted to give them, in their individual scenes, really as much presence and importance as the elephants.
Right. Well, but I guess it was called the Elephant Queen for a reason. Athena is an extraordinary matriarch. I mean, there are matriarchs and then there's Athena. She stands apart, right? Yeah. Everything about her. So 2 questions. I guess one each for each of you. One, how did you find Athena? And a question that I got from a child who asked this: how did you know that you're still following the same elephants? What if you could you have made a mistake and found yourself filming a different herd of elephants the next day?
I think the wonderful thing about Athena was that she was so distinctive. You know, she had a beautiful presence, but there's especially those long tusks with the grass notch on one side, they very much defined her. And so we would look for her, and there were very few elephants of that size or with that character of tusk out there. And you know, sometimes that meant we were flying every morning trying to find her and her family, or we'd go back to where we'd left them before in the Land Rover when we were filming the night previous. And so once we found her, you know, we could recognize her. She became like a member of the family, and so that was our way of finding her. But how we discovered her in the first place was that she actually came to us. We like to think we started off filming outside Tsavo East National Park, and then after 18 months we moved inside, and we came back into camp one day. It's been about 18 months, the whole process, and we found one of the camp crew came up and said, come and look here. It was Mzee Mzili, and he said, come with me, and he took us to a tree at the back of camp. And there was this amazing elephant sort of standing with her family in the shade of the tree. And there were youngsters lying at her feet. And then when she turned round and we saw those huge tusks, and you know, she looked like a male tusker, just her tusks a little bit thinner. But
yeah,
that's incredible. Got that, you know, she really has our character.
That's amazing.
I think that to answer the child's question, it would be lovely to know who it was. That, you know, elephants are a bit like people, and if you spend long enough around them, you recognize them. You know who's who, and you know, that always seems extraordinary when you're not living alongside an animal or an elephant or whatever. But actually, it really is just like recognizing members of your own family or friends or people at school.
Yeah, yeah. They're so distinctive. So one question that's come in, I've just seen it on this chat, is there's a particular series of shots of elephants and a skull, and the skull still has the tusks in it. And they wanted to know whose skull was that, and why did it still have the tusks there?
I think we don't know whose skull it was, but the way in which they reacted to it leads me to think that it was certainly an individual who they knew, and possibly one of their family who had made that trek before and perhaps not survived it. And we were actually very lucky to find that skull with tusks in, because most skulls, as you know, the pick and the tusks, or if an elephant dies of natural causes and KWS are notified, then they come along and take the tusks as well. So in the whole time in which we were filming, we only saw 2 or 3, perhaps 4 skulls that still had their tusks remaining. And I think that's something probably that most people, when you think about elephant culture, elephants are used to seeing dead elephants, and they do spend a lot of time investigating the tusks. And sometimes I wonder what effect that has on elephants these days, when they know that any skull they see, or very few skulls, will have the tusks left. And I think it's something we should ask ourselves, because elephant culture is hugely complex. And I know with Tatao, for example, seeing him hide his tusks in bushes when he approached the waterhole makes me think that he knew exactly that his tusks could be his undoing, and presumably he's not the only one that thinks like that.
Yeah, their intelligence is kind of unfathomable for us. Their brains are so much bigger and more complex than ours, and their communication seems to far exceed ours, in that they use so many different forms of communication.
Yeah.
We're so dependent on a few. Another question has come up, which is, how long exactly did it take to make this film? And I'd like you to break it down, maybe Vicky, the amount of time you spent in the field, and then all the rest of the time, what else goes on?
Okay, so the biggest challenge with making any film is raising the money. You start with nothing, and you have to get people to believe in it enough, to believe in the story, to believe in your vision and what you want to try and do. And then in the case of wildlife films, you have to ask them to believe in you for a very long time. The Elephant Queen took 4 years. We shot it over 4 years. And then it took an equal amount of time to both raise the money and do the post-production. When we came out of the field, we had no money to finish the film. So we had to start again raising that part of it. And so we then edited, we were in post-production for a couple of years, and then we built alongside the Elephant Queen a big outreach and education project to launch, which was launched tonight. I hope you saw it at the end of the film, and is available through elephant.co. And there's children's learn to read books, there's videos and activity books, and really it's what we wanted to do was to build a world around the Elephant Queen, which allowed people to go on exploring after the film had finished.
So this is really exciting, Victoria, and you got a little bit garbled there, unfortunately. So I just want to repeat it, that in addition to making this amazing film, which took you 6 years actually, including the post-production and the filming in the field, you actually created a huge amount of educational assets and resources, which have been loaded onto a website called elephant.co.ke, which was launched tonight, as this really was Kenya's premiere of the film. And I'm hoping that everybody who's watching this will now go onto the site, have a look at those assets and all the educational materials that are there. But there's something else very special that you guys are giving us. Can you tell me about that? Because a lot of people said, we haven't been able to see the film. So what else have we got coming up on the website?
Let me just first ask if you can hear me, because you were a bit broken up for me.
Oh, I can hear you perfectly.
Great. So, because there was so many people have said, oh, but we couldn't watch it. We weren't next to a television. Well, there's good news. Tomorrow night from, help me with the time. What time was it going to be? From 7 o'clock. The film will be available in Swahili and in Ma on elephant.co.ke. So please spread the word for anybody who missed it. We've had the film translated, and it's a unique opportunity. They'll be up and available for 1 week from tomorrow night.
Great, great. So for all the people, there's a number of people who have said that they're really regret that they weren't able to see it because there was no electricity in Kisumu, unfortunately.
Oh.
Yeah. So a question that's up on the Q&A here on the webinar, how did the elephants get used to you being around?
It's time. You have to really let them come to you. And with any animal we've ever worked with, it's about time and letting them relax enough to decide that you're not a threat. But there was one particular day, Mark, maybe you should tell them about the day when we really thought we had, or knew we claimed Athena's trust.
We started off and we were about maybe acres away from the herd, and day by day, gradually closer and closer. But there was one time when we were filming them at the base of a copy, and Athena left her calf, Princess, and walked around the other side of our vehicle. That's, we thought, well, there's two happening here. It's either a test for us, or Athena has made a mistake, and the calf's going to look up, and we're going to be between the calf and her mum, and that's not a good place to be. So we remained totally quiet, totally silent. We stopped filming, and then after a minute or two, Athena gave this little rumble. The calf looked up, looked at us, saw her mother on the other side of the vehicle, and walked slowly round front to join Athena. And I think that was, the elephants were testing us, because after that day, we were able to get so much closer and become almost like one of the herd. We were given unparalleled access.
Right, that's awesome. I'm just looking at another question here from a little boy. I hope I'm not okay. It's a little boy called Brian who said he cried when when Bimi died, unfortunately, which is very sad. You already did answer the question that he was asking. But there is a very important question here, which is, so how does the COVID-19 pandemic, what does this film tell us? What can we learn about this film in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic? And I'll give you an example, because I know that all the international filming crews in Kenya have had to leave. They've all taken off. There's all these long-term projects have stopped now, and Kenya has tons and tons of crews. And so one of the things that we've seen is crews in England in particular are asking, are there any Kenyans who can take up some of those continuous filming, because there's nobody in the field right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most amazing opportunity for, so long as people are allowed to move around and work in national parks. It's a really, truly a moment for anybody who has got talent or has got expertise around filming, probably not just wildlife, to make, to get to know people and to make a name for themselves, or to produce material that then gets used. Because it's true, every single crew that we know is grounded, and therefore, it's a wonderful moment for local filmmakers.
I think there are also some amazing things I've seen in Masai Mara, for example, because there's no tourists around. The lions and the cheetahs and the leopards are really undisturbed and just getting on with life without cars surrounding them. So for those few people who are there,
yeah, I mean, at least all the animals have been given a break, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. So on a more serious note, one of the things that we've been observing is that in ecosystems which are heavily damaged. The coronavirus seems to be much worse. That it's not just coronavirus, it's actually anywhere where we've got habitats that are severely degraded. The opportunity for disease outbreaks, the poverty that comes with degraded landscapes makes people much more vulnerable. And so one of the, what's happening in Mexico, for example, is the Minister of Health is demanding new environmental laws to reduce the amount of impact on the environment in order to safeguard the entire country from future pandemics, which I thought was quite a fascinating angle, because you're filming in a natural environment. Most Kenyans have never been to Tsavo, never been to Amboseli, but their relation to the world is urban areas and degraded environments. I think this film really does highlight, we have these extraordinary, vast, natural, places that we should be defending at all costs.
Yeah,
I totally agree, and I think what makes an ecosystem all the more robust is the biodiversity it contains, and that's why we must protect biodiversity and wild places at all costs. And that doesn't mean just the national parks. It means also giving animals room to move outside national parks when, for example, times get harsh, or we have unprecedented droughts or rains. Animals have to be able to move outside the confines of the parks, and the parks are the jewels in the crown, as it were. But we need more than that.
I mean, I've been seeing a lot of stuff on Twitter with people with their children just loving it. Of course, a lot of children so sad when Mimi died, but a lot of people, a lot of families set aside this time to sit and watch the film, and people saying they want more. They want much more of these kinds of films.
Well, one thing that I think a message to all families at this time when everybody's very much stuck at home is, if you explore on the website elephant.co.ke, you'll find 28 books which you can download for free, which are learn to read books, and they're all based on characters from the film. So there's Athena and Weiwei and Stephen the Goose and Dudu the Dung Beetle. And
right.
So you can not only extend your time with them, but also learn to read. And at the back of the books are sections on which give teachers or parents ideas on things you might do alongside the books, or ways in which you can help a child to learn to read.
Yeah, that's really brilliant. Actually, we'll be sharing a lot of that in the course of the next few days, because I'm sure with all these children who are at home, they can't go to school right now, not just in Kenya, but all around the world. That's going to be a fantastic way to learn how to read, is through these really adorable stories.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the film. Why did you choose Chiwetel Ejiofor as the narrator?
Because we wanted a soft, rich, deep storytelling voice, and not a voice where you'd think you were being talked to from above, but a voice which had kind of invited you to come and sit by the fire and listen to a story. And we just had this inkling that he could give us to deliver the story that way, which we really feel he did.
But has he ever done a documentary like this before? What did he think about this project?
We were moved to tears one day when he described what he felt about the film. I think he was deeply moved. He absolutely loved it, and I think it was the first of that type of film that he had done. No, we were very humbled by his response to the film. It was wonderful. And
he's a Nigerian, right? So it's
yes.
Really extraordinary that you were able to find an African narrator for this film. It actually, I think, gives a lot more pride to the continent. It's not just a Kenyan story; it's an African story. Why did you choose to do a public broadcast on Citizen?
Because we really wanted to make sure the film was seen as widely as possible across Kenya. And we worked very long and hard to make sure that that happened, because it's extremely easy for films not to come home. And we wanted to, well, it was, our remit initially was to make a film that the widest possible audience across the world would see, but then also to bring it home and make a difference for elephants in Kenya. And that was therefore obviously a very high priority, was to share it in Kenya and to translate it and to create all the things that we've created, which are on the website.
Fantastic. So I think then before we close, let's just repeat the name of the website and what we're going to find on this website.
elephant.co.ke, and on it you'll find children's learn to read books. You'll find very short videos which are all about elephants, things that weren't necessarily in the film. There's activity books. There's a school play, or a play that, to be honest, you could look at and put on in your sitting room. You could all dress up and put the music on and be the characters from the film. There will be, from tomorrow at 7 o'clock, there will be the Kiswahili and the Ma versions of the film itself, and they will be there for a week. The website will be up there for a long time to come. And there are interviews with elephant experts, such as Dr. Paula Kahumbu and other Kenyans, really fascinating interviews where you hear from people who are working, living alongside elephants, Kenyans, who've decided that that was the most important thing that they could do and have devoted their lives to it. So there are interviews with some of those people. There's an awful lot more to explore. It's hard to remember it all at this moment, but go and look. It's elephant.co.ke.
Okay, and what else, Mark and Vicky, last question. What big project are you on next?
we finished
covering.
Well, this has consumed us for the last 10 years. I don't know. I think, you know, we love Tsavo. There are still amazing stories to tell in Tsavo, but we need to take a breath.
Right. Well, I'm going to say, you know, thank you guys so much on behalf of all of us at Wildlife Direct and in the conservation community for this extraordinary film that we can all use to, you know, capture hearts and minds and interest in elephants and the landscapes and all the other animals that they live in. We're always asked, but what if elephants disappear? What's their role in the ecosystem really? And this film is such a valuable resource that we can all tap into. Your I don't know, commitment and dedication is unbelievable. I think you've done something that is going to have huge impact, not just here in Kenya. I hope it goes in China and it goes all across Asia and all the countries where people think that elephants equals ivory for my earrings, and they start to look at these animals differently.
One thing we forgot to mention, thank you, Paula, that was really generous of you. But one thing we forgot to mention was that until the dreadful virus incapacitated everybody, we were about to launch the Elephant Queen mobile cinema. Sorry, the Elephant Queen mobile cinema. And that was going to take the Elephant Queen and all its activities and its theatre and around Kenya to all sorts of different communities. It's something we're going to be doing. It's obviously had to be postponed, but we'll be working with all the teams and the collaborators we have across Kenya to make that happen when we all emerge from this lockdown.
Right. Well, I think that you're going to have a lot more people interested in that because now everyone has seen the film and will have access to the website. I think you're going to find yourselves inundated with people who want to come and help. I've already been receiving calls from people saying, how can I be part of this? How can I help with the outreach? So well done, and thank you so much for all your time talking to us today.
And thank you, Paula, and
thank you, Paula,
for all you do for the wild.
Thanks. All right, and thank you to all the people who came to listen to this webinar. We really appreciate it. Send us more comments and we will edit this and we'll put it up online in the course of the next couple of days. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. We can wait now.
Bye.
Bye.